On December 10, 2008, Bernie Madoff walked into his son's office and confessed to the largest fraud in human history: $65 billion in fictitious returns, 17 years of lies, 37,000 victims in 136 countries, and his own sons turned him in that night. This is the story of Bernie Madoff, the most trusted man on Wall Street and the Ponzi scheme that destroyed an entire generation of wealth. To understand how this happened, you have to understand who Madoff was before it all fell apart. Bernard Lawrence. Madoff was born April 29, 1938, in Queens, New York. His father sold stocks door to door during the Great Depression. His mother ran a small brokerage out of their apartment until the SEC shut it down for missing paperwork. Bernie went to Hofstra University, studied political science, worked as a lifeguard at Rockaway Beach to save money, and in 1960, at 22 years old, with $5,000 of his own savings, he founded Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities. He was ambitious, sharp, and obsessed with respectability. By the 1970s, Madoff Securities was one of the first firms to electronically process trades. He helped pioneer NASDAQ itself, serving 3 times as its chairman. His firm became the 6th largest market maker in the United States. On the surface, he was everything Wall Street aspired to be. But there was a second business running underneath. And that business was built on a lie. The Madoff Securities office occupied 3 floors of the Lipstick Building in Midtown Manhattan. The 18th floor held his executive offices. The 19th floor was the legitimate market-making operation. Thousands of trades a day, employees in dress shirts, Bloomberg terminals everywhere. But the 17th floor was different. The 17th floor was guarded. Few employees had access. The computers were old. The staff was small, mostly family members and longtime loyalists. And this floor was where the Ponzi scheme lived. Here is how it worked. Madoff marketed what he called a split-strike conversion strategy. He told investors he was using complex options trades to generate steady returns of 10 to 12% per year. No dramatic swings, no losing quarters, just reliable, consistent growth. Every month, investors received statements showing their accounts had grown. The returns never varied more than 0.5%. The portfolio was always somehow perfectly balanced. What investors did not know was that Madoff was not making any trades at all, not a single one. The 17th floor had no trading activity. The statements were fabricated by 2 employees, Annette Bongiorno and Joanne Krupe, who used a computer program to generate fake trade confirmations using historical market prices. When a new investor deposited money, it went into a single J.P. Morgan Chase bank account. When an old investor requested a withdrawal, they were paid out of that same account, using money from other investors. The classic Ponzi mechanism. Pay old investors with new investor money. The only unique thing about Madoff's version was the scale and how long he got away with it. 17 years, officially. Some prosecutors believe it began as early as the 1970s. Madoff himself claimed the fraud started around 1992, when a market downturn made his legitimate strategy briefly unprofitable. He could have taken the loss. He could have told his clients the honest truth. Instead, he fabricated the losing quarter and never stopped fabricating. And that is where the victims come in. Madoff did not advertise. He did not take walk-in clients. Access to his fund was considered exclusive, almost impossible to obtain. You had to be referred, you had to be vetted, and once you were accepted, you felt chosen. This created 2 powerful effects. First, Madoff's fund became a status symbol in elite circles. Country club members bragged about being invested with Bernie. Jewish charitable foundations placed hundreds of millions with him because Madoff was himself Jewish and deeply connected to that community. Second, the feeder fund network expanded his reach globally. Firms like Fairfield Greenwich Group, Kinggate Global, and Tremont Capital raised money from their own clients and funneled it to Madoff, often without those clients even knowing his name. Consider a woman named Bert Ross. Bert was a former mayor of Fort Lee, New Jersey. He had fought off organized crime in his career. He was 70 years old. He and his wife had saved $5 million over 50 years. They invested every dollar with Madoff. They lost it all. Or consider Elie Wiesel, the Nobel Peace Prize-winning Holocaust survivor. His foundation, dedicated to fighting indifference and injustice, had $15 million with Madoff. Gone. Steven Spielberg's foundation, Sandy Koufax's retirement, Kevin Bacon's life savings, Larry King's trust, Ziza Gabor's estate, Yeshiva University's endowment, the Robert Ein Lapin Foundation, which had to lay off its entire staff the day after the news broke. In total, 37,000 individuals and institutions across 136 countries invested with Madoff directly or through feeder funds. And there were warning signs. Many warning signs. For many years. A financial analyst from Boston named Harry Markopolos was asked in 1999 to replicate Madoff's returns using the same strategy. Markopolos was a quantitative analyst, a math specialist. His employer wanted to compete with Madoff. Markopolos spent 4 hours studying the numbers. He concluded, mathematically, that the returns were impossible. His firm asked him to try harder. Markopolos tried for 5 months. He could not make the math work. The options market Madoff claimed to be using was simply not large enough to support the volume he claimed. Markopolos concluded there were only two possibilities. Either Madoff was running a Ponzi scheme, or he was front-running his market-making clients on the 19th floor using their trading data. Either way, it was fraud. In May 2000, Markopolos sent his first formal complaint to the Securities and Exchange Commission. It was 21 pages long. It laid out the math, the red flags, and named Madoff directly. The SEC did nothing. So in 2005, Markopolos sent another complaint. 29 pages this time. Same conclusion, same math. He titled it, quote, "The world's largest hedge fund is a fraud." The SEC did nothing. In 2007, Markopolos sent a third complaint and a fourth. He even gave examiners a list of specific trades Madoff claimed to have made, pointing out that the volumes required would have exceeded the entire options market on those days. The SEC opened investigations in 2005 and again in 2007. Both times, examiners interviewed Madoff personally. Both times, they accepted his answers without verifying them. Both times, they concluded there was no fraud. Then the financial crisis came, and the Ponzi began to collapse. By late 2008, the global economy was in freefall. Investors everywhere were pulling money from hedge funds to cover losses elsewhere. Madoff began receiving redemption requests he could not meet. In November 2008, investors asked to withdraw $7 billion. Madoff had less than $300 million in the bank. The scheme had days left. On December 8th, Madoff told his brother Peter that he was planning to pay employee bonuses early. Peter pushed back, questioning the timing. Bernie did not answer. On December 9th, Madoff met with his sons Mark and Andrew. He announced he wanted to accelerate annual bonuses by 2 months. The sons asked why. Madoff said he needed to talk to them, but not at the office. That night, at his Manhattan penthouse on East 64th Street, surrounded by Picassos and Mies van der Rohe furniture, Bernie Madoff sat his 2 sons down in the living room, and he confessed. He told them the entire investment advisory business was a fraud, that he was, in his own words, finished. He said he had maybe $700 million left to pay out, and he intended to distribute what remained to family members and favored clients. He asked Mark and Andrew to help him do it. Mark and Andrew Madoff walked out of that apartment, called their lawyer, and turned their father in. On the morning of December 11th, 2008, FBI agents arrived at Bernie Madoff's penthouse. He was still in his pajamas. An agent asked, quote, "Is there an innocent explanation?" Madoff, almost smiling, replied, "There is no innocent explanation." What happened next broke families, broke charities, broke an entire generation of trust in Wall Street. Mark Madoff, age 46, hanged himself in his Manhattan apartment on December 11th, 2010. the second anniversary of his father's arrest. His 2-year-old son was in the next room. Andrew Madoff, Bernie's other son, died of cancer in 2014 at 48 years old. He publicly blamed the stress of the scandal, saying, quote, "My father killed my brother just as surely as if he had put a gun to his head." Ruth Madoff, Bernie's wife of 50 years, gave up her homes, her jewelry, her art, and her dignity. She lived in one of her surviving son's houses in Connecticut until her own death. Bernie Madoff pleaded guilty on March 12, 2009, exactly 77 years to the day after Ivar Kreuger, the Match King, put a pistol to his chest in Paris to cover a fraud that helped create the SEC. The parallel would have been poetic if it had not been so dark. Madoff was sentenced to 150 years in federal prison. He died on April 14, 2021, at age 82, in a North Carolina prison hospital. He never publicly apologized. His brother Peter, who served as chief compliance officer, was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. Annette Bongiorno and Joanne Krupe, the 2 employees who typed up the fake trade confirmations, were sentenced to 6 years each. Both claimed they never understood what they were doing. Both were convicted of knowing exactly what they were doing. Frank DePascali, Madoff's chief lieutenant, cooperated with prosecutors and testified for the government. He died of cancer in 2015 before his sentencing. Harry Markopolos, the whistleblower the SEC ignored for nearly a decade, received no reward, no recognition, no financial settlement. He wrote a book about the experience called No One Would Listen. Most of the money was never recovered. A court-appointed trustee named Irving Picard has spent the last 15 years trying to claw back stolen funds from profit-takers, investors who happened to withdraw money before the scheme collapsed and who unknowingly received other victims' deposits. Picard has recovered about $14 billion of the $17+ billion in actual losses. For many victims, it has not been enough. Many died waiting. And the SEC itself was transformed by the scandal. In the years after Madoff, the agency reformed its enforcement division, hired specialized investigators, and began verifying assets with custodians directly rather than trusting self-reported holdings. But the deepest scar is not institutional. It is human. 37,000 victims, families that never recovered, retirements erased, charities closed, 2 of Bernie's children dead, and a quiet, uncomfortable truth that lingers over Wall Street to this day. Madoff was not caught by the SEC. He was not caught by regulators. He was not caught by the feeder funds who made millions off his fraud. He was caught because the world economy collapsed and his own sons refused to be part of it anymore. Bernie Madoff is buried in an unmarked grave. His family wanted no funeral. His name today is shorthand for the most catastrophic financial betrayal in living memory. But the deeper lesson is older than him. It is the same lesson Ivar Kreuger taught 77 years earlier, the same one every major Ponzi scheme has taught since. Trust alone is never going to be enough. If you want more stories like this one, fallen empires, financial collapses, the frauds that shaped the modern world, new investigations drop every Tuesday and Friday at @foldedbills. Thanks for watching.